Now, the head of China's transplant system has denied claims that organs are still being taken from executed prisoners. The former Deputy Health Minister says there are plenty of organs available from patients who die in hospital, as well as rising numbers of people registering for the country's new organ donation system. But campaigners say there's a roaring trade in organs from so-called prisoners of conscience to meet transplant targets of up to 100,000 operations every year. Matthew Hill has this exclusive report.
She seems so used to seeing Korean visitors.
This undercover reporter captures a Korean patient recovering from a liver transplant at a hospital in Tianjin City, China. The suspicion is there's a roaring trade in organs being harvested by the Chinese regime. The nurse says they did 7 transplants on the previous day. In other countries, it can take years to get a suitable organ, but here it's only weeks. So where are they coming from? China admits it used to take organs from executed prisoners and claims it stopped the practice in 2015. But this campaigner believes organs are still being harvested from prisoners of conscience. Falun Gong is a spiritual movement based on meditation, regarded as an illegal sect by China. In 2005, Annie was sent to this re-education camp in Beijing. She claims healthy Falun Gong practitioners like her were given invasive and unwanted medical tests.
I was severely tortured mentally and physically, but at the same time, they took all these Falun Gong practitioners to the nearest hospital and have a regular body check. They include like chest X-ray, liver test is ultrasound, and a blood test every 3 months.
Another Falun Gong detainee who was released last year also believes organs are being procured from prisoners of conscience.
So in the jail hospital for a few times, they took my hand inside a window, and then they would have a rubber band wrapped around my arm, and then took the needle over there and then take the blood out. And not just me, all the practitioners of Falun Gong. They force you to renounce your beliefs. So if you don't do so, they would beat you up. They choose places like your legs, your arms, and your hip part, but your organ part, they don't touch.
I've come to a gathering of international transplant surgeons in Madrid. Transplant surgeon Zheng Shusen is also a local leader of an organization set up to persecute Falun Gong followers. I wanted to ask him about a controversial paper he'd written, which falsely claimed no prisoners' organs were transplanted. Did you, in the paper, you misled people about the organs? You said they were not from prisoners. Professor Sheng, do you not want to answer my questions? Clearly not. But the doctor in charge of China's fledgling organ donation scheme was prepared to take a few questions. He said, so far, there were 500,000 volunteers. But is that really enough to deliver all the transplants in such a huge country?
Last year, we have 15,000 organ transplantation performed.
He claimed organs came from some of the 6 million people who die each year in intensive care. They estimate it's about at least 100,000 transplants.
That's nonsense. I don't want to answer the questions because no.
Well, how come I rang up? I was offered a liver very quickly from a hospital in China. How is that possible?
I don't want to listen and answer the question. Somebody with some political agendas. Well, okay, you understand?
China has yet to allow transplant surgeons from abroad to inspect their hospitals unannounced. Until there is greater transparency, the suspicion will remain that prisoners detained for what they believe are the new source for organs. Matthew Hill, BBC News.
Well, I'm joined now by Ethan Gutmann, author of The Slaughter, who was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for his work on transplant abuse. I'm also joined here in the studio by Dr. Enver Tohti, a surgeon who harvested organs from a political prisoner in the 1990s. Well, thank you both for joining me here on the programme. Doctor, to you, first of all, you were involved in that organ harvesting back in 1995. Tell me what happened.
Well, that was summer in 1995. And my chief surgeon asked me to assemble a mobile teams and bring the largest mobile operation equipment and report to him next day morning, 9:30 at the hospital gate. So I did assemble a team, and there were 6, 7 of us. So next day morning, 9:30, we appeared at the hospital gate. Then just 2 chief surgeons appeared in a car, and they said, "Follow us." So we followed them all the way to the Western Mountain execution ground. We were a little scared. We thought of what we are going to do in the execution ground. Upon the arrival, we had been told that you wait behind this hill. When you hear the gunshots, then you come in. So we took the order, and we patiently wait behind the hill. Then we heard the gunshot. The gunshot is not like machine gun shot, it's like many rifle shot at the same time. So we rushed in. Then there was one police officer told me, "The far right one is yours." So we went to the far right one. There was a man shot to the chest, lying down the ground.
And he was shot on the right-hand side of the chest, away from the organs. He was still alive, wasn't he, when you took those organs out? How does a professional doctor like yourself agree to be part of that?
Well, you know, in China at that time, because we were born straight into the washing machine, got our brain washed. So we strongly believe whatever we do is for the motherland. And to eliminate the enemy of the state is our duty. So anyone who has been sentenced to death penalty, we think it is a bad person. So we didn't feel guilty.
And you believe that, and that's why you took part. Ethan, you're one of the leading researchers in this whole area. The Chinese, we saw it there in that report, they say they stopped doing this in 2015. Yeah. What do you make of that claim?
Well, they actually, my book was published, and 10 days later, they made the announcement they were going to stop on December 1st, 2015. Well, we went on to do further research, and in 2016 we came up with this massive doorstop of a report which shows that, in fact, they were not doing 10,000 transplants per year in China. They were doing 60,000 to 100,000 transplants per year in China. Now, that figure is pretty indisputable, because Congress got behind it, and so did, actually, after looking at it quite skeptically at first, and so did the European Parliament.
And where do you think the organs for that come from? Do you concur with what you just saw in that report?
We cannot explain this any other way. I mean, we even know that the Chinese have made announcements that they're not harvesting regular criminals, murderers, rapists, and so forth at the same rate. I don't think they are. The gap is huge. It's enormous. It can't be filled. Even their made-up numbers on voluntary donations cannot fill this gap. And that leaves Uyghurs, Falun Gong, Tibetans, house Christians. And the fact is that the Uyghur situation has, in a single year, turned into a human rights catastrophe.
Now, some governments have banned their citizens going abroad for organ transplantation. Do you think that needs to become a global ban?
I do, but I would just want to mention those countries because they're worthy of some special respect. The first one was Israel. I believe the second one was then Italy and Taiwan and Spain. Now, Taiwan right now is going through a political cycle and an election cycle, and their Ministry of Health just announced that 9,000 Taiwanese have gone to the mainland for organs, and they are going to stop that, and they're going to cut off, at least they have mentioned the idea of cutting off the anti-rejection drugs to those patients, or at least cutting off the funding for that.
Doctor, a final question to you. Do you think this practice is still going on? And as a Uyghur, you heard what Ethan was saying about that community being targeted along with the Falun Gong. And you said to me a little earlier that at the time you didn't feel guilty. When you reflect back on that a couple of decades back now, in the position you're in now, do you feel guilty in terms of what you did?
I did. Because when I come to this country, I learned for the first time what is called civilization and what is called human rights. Then when I met Ethan Gutmann presenting the book, and I felt that is the time I have to confess this and tell the world. And from this Chinese advertisement for the organs, for example, they can get you an organ in 4 hours' time. We cannot explain unless you have unlimited supply of organs. So this, because China is the country still hiding behind the Iron Curtain, so we have to look at some other things to figure it out. For example, there has been 100,000 Uyghur people gone missing since 1995. We don't know where they have gone. And since 2016, they started doing this health checkup and blood testing. And we said, what is this for? Since they don't give a logical explanation, we have to come to our logical conclusion is that they are building the organ online database.
Well, Dr. Enver, Tohti, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for coming in and talking to us here on the BBC. Ethan Gutmann too, thanks very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for more on that story, you can listen to the World Service documentary, Who to Believe? China's Organ Transplants. You can find that on our website at BBC.